Well, oil prices are continuing their downward spiral thanks to the coronavirus. More and more, fewer and fewer of us are driving, and so the demand is down substantially. How low did it get? Well, it hit an all-time low on Monday, with prices dipping below negative. That's less than $0 a barrel. And this essentially means that crude oil producers would have to pay buyers to take their supply. So to explain what this means is Will Englund. He's an energy reporter for the Washington Post. I guess we'll start with how we got here, Will. I recall at the beginning of this pandemic, there was also this fight happening with Saudi Arabia and Russia over the price of oil, and that was sort of contributing to the volatility of the stock market. And then it seems like things just started to spin downward from there.
That's exactly right. There was, let's see, this was in March. There was an effort by the Saudis to cut world oil production because they felt that the pandemic was going to cut demand. The Russians wouldn't go along, so the Saudis said, okay, to heck with that. We're going to go to war with you. And they both began pumping a lot of oil out. Price went down, price went down. Consumption has gone down tremendously since the beginning of March, maybe 25, 30%. And we've been left with a gigantic glut of oil all over the world. Storage capacity is almost filled up. And yet companies are still pumping oil because that's what companies do. And what we saw yesterday was this craziness where there is so much oil and so little need for it that, in theory, you'd have to pay someone to take the oil away from you. What really was happening was that people who had bought these futures contracts were absorbing a loss on them.
And so now we've seen this tweet from the President of the United States that he is working to secure funding for oil and gas companies. But I guess the question that I will have, and a lot of Americans will have, is what will happen to places like, for example, West Texas, local economies, people who work in the oil and gas industry going forward? I mean, presumably, in addition to the 20 million Americans who have filed for unemployment, we could see some severe repercussions and damage done to local economies because of the price, where oil is headed.
I think we could, particularly in West Texas, as you said, and in North Dakota, where oil services is a big part of the economy. Interestingly, up to now, there of course have been layoffs in those fields, that in the thousands. But when you compare the millions of Americans who have lost their jobs in the last couple of weeks, it kind of pales by comparison. Texas, the first week of April, had 6,000, I think, of people in the oil and gas sector applying for unemployment benefits, and something like 300,000 people in all sectors of the economy. So it hasn't really hit employment in a big way yet, but as you say, I think that's certainly in the offing. The big cuts so far have been in the money that companies want to spend on digging new wells. So that's where the economic pain is going to come in. The wells that are there right now, up to now, most of them have continued to operate. Most of the service companies that provide the keep them operating have stayed in business. Companies are starting to shut in their wells now. They're starting to close them down, which is very painful financially for them. And I think that's where the real economic pain is going to start to come in these oil areas of the country.
So I, like many people, have not been to the gas station in like a month. I remember when the shutdown order happened, I didn't know what was happening, so I thought, let me just fill up. At least I have a full tank of gas. I'm now down to my last quarter tank of gas. What will this mean when I go to the gas pumps? Clearly, gas is not free.
No, they're not going to pay you to fill your tank, but the price certainly has gone down, and it's probably going to keep going down. Like you, we haven't filled our tank in a long time, and I'm curious to see how far it goes down. Obviously, when you're buying gasoline, you're paying for the cost of refining the oil into the gas, the shipment of the gasoline to your neighborhood gas station, paying for the upkeep of the gas station and paying state taxes. So there's always going to be some money you're going to have to shell out for gas.
All right, Will Englund of the Washington Post. Will, as always, we thank you, my friend. Stay safe. We appreciate it.
You too. Thanks a lot.
All right, we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dig into all the day's news, including the U.S. response to the pandemic, including local responses by the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, the mayor of New York City, and others across the country, Georgia, Tennessee. Some of those economies are reopening. We're going to dig into that. Stick around. We'll be right back.